Can't believe it. This week has flown by. It is so good to be back on the Avero live stream. As I mentioned last week, our founder and CEO has hogged the camera a little bit, but I'm very appreciative for him being willing to go live every Wednesday for you guys. If you are new to the stream, let us know where you're joining from. Even if you're not new to the stream, please comment, ask us questions. We love for these things to be interactive. We want to know what you guys are hearing. We want to know what's trending, maybe where you're at in the United States, and we want to know what your pain points are. We're here for you. And if you are new to the stream, Avero Advisors is an independent third-party consulting firm specializing in the public sector in all things digital transformation. Our bread and butter really is ERP transformations along with IT strategic planning, and we really are nerds about business process re-engineering. Make sure that you're following us on all social channels, and please make sure to download our ERP survival guide. We're very proud of that asset, and if you're thinking about embarking on an ERP transition, you really want to download that content. With me today, I have two very distinguished members of our project delivery team, Mr. David Buchan, who you all have seen before, and Isaac Olson, who you've seen recently. So David is a project manager on our delivery side, and Isaac is a associate consultant who just joined the team not too long ago. He just graduated, but I will let him tell you his story and how he ended up at Avero. And without further ado, I'll let both of them introduce themselves. So, David, if you want to start off, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello, everybody that is rejoining the stream from previously. My name is David Buchan. If I haven't met you before, I'm a project manager here at Avero Advisors. As Megan said, I do have a little bit of a specialty in public safety. So I worked on some CAD, RMS, and jail management systems, but also our ERP systems and IT strategic planning. So a lot of experience with helping out our clients, and excited to talk with you all today. I'll kick it over to Isaac for his introduction. If I don't hear something about flying, I'm going to be upset.
Yeah, well, you guys are probably familiar with me from our last stream, which, like David mentioned, was a little bit of aviation ERP, building those connections and that bridge. So that was a good time. Happy to be back on. These are fun. So glad I got an invite back. Like Megan said, I did just graduate from UT, studied finance there. So that's a little bit of my background. As far as Avero, I got to know them through actually a school project. It was a case study that we got to help try and find a solution for the company. So built connection there. Got to spend some time on the business development side of things, which was amazing and has definitely helped me as I moved into the project delivery side, now working on several projects, including a Workday implementation. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Isaac. Yes, Isaac, we enjoyed having you over on the business development team. I was sad to give you up to project delivery, but you're doing a great job over there. And in fact, if you haven't seen our recent postings, we just hosted I think it was 6 or 8 interns this summer, some from the universities across the state. And wow, what some very, very smart individuals that they were. So if you do see that post, please show them some love. We had a great time with them this summer and solved a lot of the things that we needed to internally with those folks and with their shared insight. So shout out to the interns. You guys did a great job. Okay, let's dive in. So the politics of procurement. So for those of you who do not know, at Avero Advisors, a big piece of our business development side is responding to any RFP related to our service offerings, right? And I know that there are tons of assets out there in video documentation of me griping about the procurement process and how that works, and tips and tricks on how to write RFPs going forward, specifically for our services. But on our project delivery side, part of our ERP transformation work is helping our clients define requirements definitions to then go and procure a new ERP system. So that's where this topic comes from. I really wanted to dive into the fairness and how we help our clients craft those RFPs while still remaining agnostic, right? So let's dive right in. My first question is, Dave, Isaac, what role do we play as advisors in the procurement process? You know, we have to walk a fine line between what the client actually wants and then the procurement department, who, let's be honest, keeps us out of jail, right? But sometimes there's a lot of red tape. So just talk to me a little bit about what role we play as advisors in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. So the role that we play, and this is obviously a small part of it, there's a lot of things that go into this, but one of the more important things is to be defining what your system truly needs to do. What's going to be the best thing that's going to resolve those pain points that you're currently doing. So you're not going through an ERP transformation process just because you felt like it. You're more than likely going through it because you're dealing with a lot of current state pain points. And it's going through defining those requirements as far as what do we need the new system to do to help out those pain points, and then working with procurement to go through those scoring matrix. So usually a lot of times for procurement, a lot of things will have a weighted score for each item. So how they responded to requirements, what's their cost proposal, going through those weighted items and make sure that everything's kind of fairly balanced for the client is one of the bigger parts that we do for our procurement. I'm actually going through this currently with one of our current clients right now. We've got an RFP out on the street for them, and we're about to be going through and looking at these proposals and scoring those. So we're going to be looking at not only how well does the solution work for them, but also the financial aspect of it. So going through and having touch points with procurement, talking about the proposals that are coming in and what we're going to be looking at for scoring is very, very important to set up that framework. So it's an easy and fair framework that can be applied to all vendors across the board.
Isaac, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the important thing to keep in mind is that we're kind of the wall between everybody. You know, you got vendors pushing on the scores and people up in the like city council pushing on the scores and vice versa. Like we are the wall that, you know, keeps fairness between all those groups. There's going to be lobbyists, and we got to keep that in mind as we're developing these, like you said, scoring matrices and whatnot. Keep it fair, keep it to the numbers, right? So how can we develop scoring that doesn't necessarily favor a particular vendor, keeping all that in mind as we go through the process?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I want to talk a little bit about the actual crafting of the RFP, right? So how do we define, or how do we help define what clients need from an ERP vendor? How do we help them, really dive into getting the most responses, right? Because the thing about it is I've heard this story multiple times where vendors come to me and they say, so-and-so released an RFP, but they copied it from a neighboring community and we feel like it's written for a different vendor, right? And so we're not responding. And so therefore that organization only gets one or two responses because, other vendors think it's crafted for a said vendor. So how do we help our clients, right, define those requirements to where it is all encompassing to ensure that they get the most responses?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we go through and we draft our RFP, as I said, we kind of go through, we define those requirements for what the new system needs to do. And those are fantastic. Those go into our requirements traceability matrix, which is attached to the RFP. But in the RFP itself, we're going to make sure that we use neutral and agnostic language to avoid any specific thing that might point to one vendor or another. I would say a lot of times going to these, our clients are very, very open-minded, of course, as are we, but we want to make sure that we're tailoring this the way everybody can give their best proposal possible. And then also helping the client determine what kind of timeline are we looking at for not only getting proposals, because you get these proposals, they can be, for example, if you have a 50-page page limit and you have 10 proposals come in, that's 500 pages that you're going to have to read through. That's a lot of work to do. So make sure that you're setting an appropriate timeline between reviewing those proposals and actually selecting a short list of people that you want to see come out and demonstrate. That's one of the big things that we do to make sure that everybody has time to thoroughly go through stuff. Everybody's proposal can be thoroughly looked at and evaluated properly. There's no real rushing into it. Like I said, there's a lot of things that go into it. A lot of things are going to be the language, defining what the scope of work is. This is the areas that we need these modules in, and these are the items that we need them to do. Usually we'll talk a little bit about the current state in there, say this is the pain points that our client's currently facing, and we're going to let those vendors come in and kind of explain how they're going to fix those pain points. That's a few things off the top of my head, Isaac. I'll let you go and cut in so I don't take up all the time.
Yeah, you're taking all my talking points. No, I agree. And ultimately it goes back to, we're trying to find a solution to the problem, right? So you cannot get lost that ultimately we found a problem in discovery. now we're drafting this RFP. How can we, solve this problem? What is the best solution? So you're going to run into, opinions. People are going to heard things like we said from other neighboring counties. Oh, Workday does this better, blah 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 blah. Like, and it's important to understand that until you see the system, we got to keep to the scoring. You got to stay unbiased. So like David said, a lot of the wording and templates are great, but it does not apply to everything. And from my BD side of the work, templates are nice because they make things easy, but then you end up with a product that might not be as good, and that's ultimately what we're trying to get away from. So how do we kind of break down those templates? How do we really customize them to get what the county or the organization actually needs, and again, make sure we're getting to that solution.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think what we are really good at is helping our clients define what those outcomes should be, right? What are they looking to achieve? Isaac, you said it best. We have to solve a problem. So early on, before we even talk about crafting an RFP, we do a really good job with meeting with key stakeholders and defining really what that vision is, right? What do you want to gain from doing this ERP overhaul, right? And it starts there. So talk a little bit about this, what I call a phase zero, right? We're not just going to go into a project and say, we're going to craft an RFP. You could, it depends on what stage the client is and how ready they are. But let's talk about, an overall needs assessment or a phase zero before you even start talking about requirements, definitions, and crafting the RFP.
Yeah, that phase zero is very, very important because if you're going through this ERP process, obviously a lot of people have pain points. It's going to be collecting those pain points and kind of going through the root issues. Is it a tweak that we do on the internal side as far as our workflows? A lot of times it is these clients, they have very, very old legacy systems that do not support modern functionality. So going through and seeing, hey, well, this modern functionality that's available out there on the market from multiple vendors, is that going to resolve this pain point? So it's really going to be collecting. We know that we need to go to a new ERP system. Let's make a good business case for it for the first part. So you can take this to your governing board whenever that contract comes through. You have that good business case instead of, hey, Joe, Sally, and Tim really do not like the ERP system. We want to change it. No, we'll actually have documented proof saying this process is taking a lot longer than it needs to. It's actually wasting kind of some of the city's personal capital. Going through defining those pain points, and that's what plays into those requirements. It's going to be current state process mapping. If the client wants to do that, kind of really do a visual overhaul and showing how long is this process really taking. Because somebody can come to me and say, hey, it takes me, an hour and a half to do this one process, when, I know my friend at another city, it takes them 15 minutes because they're on a new ERP system. We can actually take that and do a visual diagram to show everybody hey, here's for example, one of my clients, they have a process that they do every single day. I went through, did a process map with them, and they couldn't believe it because it was about, I think, 183 steps that they were doing. And it's just so constant and repeating that they're used to doing it. But when you put it out on a map, they're like, oh my goodness, this is insane. It shouldn't take 183 steps to do this one small thing. We're not trying to solve world hunger. We're trying to do a standard report and triple check something is all. So I would say that's some of the key points for phase zero. It's more of, let's go from talking about we don't like our ERP system to let's get some actual data, some actual evidence for that. So that way, that's going to help you craft and figure out what you want to do for the future. How do you want it to look in the future?
Yeah, David, I agree that you gave a very good technical answer, and I'm going to go a little bit softer skill side. I think a lot of it lies in the people, right? How well can you get to know the people, get to know their pain points, and if you talk to them, they're gonna share their experiences, and that's where we can learn more. Because yes, a mapping session is great and they're needed, but if you really sit down with different levels of the organization, that's where you find the different pain points at those different spots as it moves through a process. Not too long ago, I got to go out to a county, and it was extremely valuable experience because I got to talk to people that I don't normally see on these meetings, or maybe, have their cameras off that I don't get to talk to. So I think that's really important, is just getting to know those people and then, taking what you learn from them and how can we apply it going forward.
Absolutely. I think RFPs should do their best to tell a good story, right? When I'm looking at RFPs that are released into the world on a weekly basis, I am looking for a good story and a good snapshot of where the organization is at in this digital transformation journey so that I am able to tailor my response to them and also my resources and my budget, right? So I think that a good RFP should tell a good story and should provide a good snapshot of where the organization is at that place and time, right? So what do you all think? How important do you think it is to be vendor agnostic during any of this, right? We see it all the time. I see, competitors of ours who, they market that they're vendor agnostic, but then when it really gets down to the wire and you see which vendor they go with, typically it's not agnostic. It's not an agnostic approach. So how important is that to you all on the delivery side that we always remain agnostic?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely critically important, especially if it's you go out to these conferences. A lot of our clients will attend these conferences. These vendors will be there, and they'll even provide like a small system demo. It's probably like 5-10 minutes long, and something's on the vendor floor. But those 5-10 minutes are meant to just purely wow you. It's nothing that's wrong with the system or nothing that doesn't necessarily work well for your department. So staying agnostic instead of taking, hey, I saw X vendor at this conference, I want to go with them. If you stay agnostic, you're able to go through the checks and balances, go through every single piece of the system and see that it's going to work for your organization. They could be showing you one thing that's like, hey, this is revolutionary for our department, but for the finance department, the module that's in there, it does not work at all for them. So staying agnostic with that, not making those predetermined notions is going to be really important to assess the systems and see which one's going to work the best for everybody involved with your department.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't fall for the flashy stuff. That's kind of my advice there. Like they're going to show you the best part of their system, the thing that they're built for. But you got to keep in mind a lot of these when we're doing ERP implementation, it's, finance, HR, payroll, and you can't just because, they have a really good solution for one of those, you can't leave the rest of your departments in the dust because in the end, it all connects. And so, again, if you have your superstar athlete, but you don't have anybody that can throw to him, for example, it doesn't matter. So you got to make sure that it's the best solution overall for you as an organization, not just for one department.
Isaac, you bring up a great point. You said you can't leave any other departments in the dust. And I know from a delivery perspective, that's probably really hard to navigate when you all are doing the scoring and you're working with the clients because maybe this project is very finance heavy and finance is leading the charge and they are really gung ho on X product. And then you have HR who sometimes doesn't have a seat at the table. Like, how do we help clients navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think easiest answer is it goes back to the people, right? Stakeholders. So you're gonna have, your main project sponsor, and they might be part of finance, like you said. But again, if I know those people, if I understand who my stakeholders are, who's affected by the project, it's our job to also understand their needs and keep that in mind as we're going through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of build off that, Isaac, sorry, Megan, I know that you're probably about to
No.
ask a follow-up question with that. I think a really, really important part is to identify that executive sponsorship for the project, the glue that's going to kind of hold everything together. Because at times, and it's always everybody wants the better for their department. They also want the betterment for the overall, of course. It's not everybody necessarily being selfish, but you can fall into a little bit of a tug of war. This system's a lot better for our department as opposed to this department. So defining that executive sponsorship, having those open conversations and discussions really helps, not necessarily say ease the water, but kind of get everybody together as a team. Kind of like Isaac said, he gave a great analogy. I'm a big sports guy. If you have a star quarterback and you don't have an offensive line, it's not really going to matter, unfortunately. He's not going to be able to throw the ball. So you want to make sure that every single department is well supported by this new system, whether you go a single source system or a best of breed. But that's where that executive sponsorship, I think, comes in very, very critical because they're kind of the glue that holds everything together internally for the client, for their organization. So they can kind of be your champion to make sure that everybody gets, exactly what they need.
Yeah, no, I love that analogy too, especially since fantasy football is gearing up. I mean, I can go even further and talk about the Miami Dolphins, right? When Tua is in, Devon Achane does a great job, but when Tua is hurt, he does not. He's garbage. So great analogy, Isaac. I really like that, and I like how you guys tied it back to executive sponsorship. That's really awesome. We might have to do like some kind of live stream where we do like a mock draft or something and
I was
talk
about
about
to say we need to mock
facets
draft.
of ERP. I don't know how we can do that, but anyway, I think we should. So let's talk about you. We've talked about leaving departments in the dust. There could be a solution to that, and it's the idea of best of breed. So how do we help our clients? How do we help educate them on what best of breed could mean for them? And then how do we help them understand if that language needs to be put in the RFP document?
Yeah, I think it starts definitely with an upfront conversation as far as defining those requirements. Is it multiple departments that are having issues, and you can kind of determine, okay, these departments, most modern ERP systems support them pretty well, or are the problems very, very unique, very, very particular that you might need to look at best of breed? It's going to be having those conversations up front. The minute you start your current state discovery, you start getting some information as far as what's going on currently. That's when you start having that conversation with the executive sponsorship to figure out what are you going to exactly be targeting. We're looking to go one single system, or are we looking to go best of breed? And I know a lot of times in the RFPs, we'll sit there and say, hey, if you want to propose a all-in-one solution, we're more than happy to view that. We'll also accept some best of breed, or if you have vendor partners that you're working with to help supplement some other modules, including that language, kind of keeping a little bit of those options open, because there's some times where it's not always 100% defined through that current state discovery process. We are going best of breed, period, end of story. So when you're going out to RFP, you want to make sure that you get a lot of responses, but B, you have a lot of options to pick from. The last thing you want to happen is send out an RFP and get 3 proposals, and now you only have 3 systems to choose from. You're kind of putting yourself in a corner right there. You want to make sure you keep your options open and what's going to be best for you overall.
Yeah, Dave, you kind of hit it there with just hit it up front, right? If you are looking for a finance system, okay, great, we can do that. But make sure that we know where those gaps are going to be later, and so that we can kind of prepare for them as we go through the process. Just be prepared with other options, or just know some things that might need a little bit of time that we could invest, and just not letting those things slip through the cracks or get ignored.
Yeah, we had a situation recently where there was an RFP that was released that the language in it was a little bit misleading, which shocker, they sometimes always are, but um, there was language around a single system integrator, right? They wanted best of breed, but they also wanted a single system integrator, right? And some of the best of breed, I mean, they don't have SSIs, right? And so they're going to have to get on a bid with one of these major players, and that's not always a good thing. So I just wanted to bring that up and talk about that a little bit, because you don't want to, like Dave said, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself. You don't want to put yourself in a box to where these vendors, when you release the RFP, they don't know how to respond, or they can't respond because you put that language in there. So thoughts on that piece, Dave or Isaac? A lot of these best of breed vendors can't go after, a project with one of the bigger solutions, because, they're sometimes all encompassing. So they're really competing, and it makes it harder for them. So how do you avoid that?
Yeah, I would say a good way to avoid that is when you're starting this process, it's really keeping that open mind and not necessarily talking from the vendor agnostic side that we already hit on. It's keeping an open mind to looking at new solutions that are going to be coming down the road. Like you said, you definitely have some market knowledge as far as going to these conferences and everything, but when you get to the proposals, you get to the actual seeing what people are going to propose as far as cost, implementation timeline, support that they're going to offer. You want to make sure that you kind of keep your options open a little bit with that. If you have a very, very set specific thing that needs to be in that RFP, that's absolutely fine. But if you have the possibility, let's try and keep kind of an open mind as far as how we're going to approach that, so that way you do avoid that pigeonholing of yourself. Because the last thing you want to do is go through this long process to draft an RFP, get it on the street, and then what comes of it is not necessarily what you're really hoping for. There's a lot of work that goes into this, a lot of manpower, not only necessarily from the consultant side, but also from the client side. They've been in, tons of meetings. They've taken time away from their day to kind of pursue this project. You want to make sure that outcome, those proposals, you should be excited when you get them. You should say, oh my goodness, we have, so many systems to choose from, so many different opportunities for the future. But if you end up pigeonholing yourself by accident, then you can get to that point. It's like, okay, so we did all this work and we only have 2 proposals that really came to us. And neither one of them don't necessarily look fantastic. So I think it's going to be keeping an open mind and kind of clarifying, what approach and why you're looking for that approach.
The only thing I'll add to that is RFP, it's kind of a balance, right? How specific can we get? How vague can we be, right? So there are definitely some things you got to get in there, but you don't want to rule anybody out. So, can we get the solution, but also allow the opportunity for people to tell their story and help provide, their suggestions. So that's all I got.
No, that's great, Isaac. Let's talk about red flags. So if I am a public sector agency and I am, and if I'm looking to craft an RFP or engage with a consultant to do some of this pre-work that needs to be done before we craft an RFP, what am I looking for and what am I not looking for? Like what are some red flags in your all's opinion?
It's a good question. I would say, as far as what are we looking for, what are we not looking for, and just specifically talking about that phase 0, we want to talk about it's a structured approach. Obviously, we want to talk about the future state and what people are wanting to see out of a new modern system. But it's when we're talking about that current state, let's talk about specifically how it's working for you all today. Where are the pitfalls? Where is the data exchange kind of getting broken? Are you still printing out documents, walking across the street to the courthouse to drop it off because you can't send it via email and the system doesn't go into that? So I would definitely say not necessarily a red flag, but we really want to focus on what are the pain points. And then when we get to that future state, we want to make sure that we're looking at what can most modern systems do for you, not necessarily just this one system that we saw. That's where you kind of break the lines of agnostic a little bit. You want to keep those options open. So I would say that's really what we're looking for when we're going through and doing these phases of these projects.
Yeah. Dave, what are some questions that if you were a city or county or quasi-government agency that you would be asking your consultants when looking to hire a consultant like us?
Yeah, when looking to hire, I mean, one of the things that I would really ask is as far as what's the structured approach to the project, because Isaac hit on it really, really well a little bit earlier. It's not all about the technical stuff. It's not all about coming and doing process maps and doing this RTM. It's going to be about forming that relationship so you can actually understand that. It's one thing for me to hop on a call with you and you sit there and say, hey, I hate doing the budgeting process. This is why I note it down and we don't talk again. It's actually forming that relationship so you can see other parts of that pain point that don't come out in those data gathering sessions that are always just specifically driven towards putting something on a document, putting something in data and quantitatively. It's going to be talking to these people about these pain points. You might uncover some other things that a modern system can help with, but maybe there's something that we need to do as far as the actual workflow itself. How are we going to proceed as a department? So I think Isaac hit on it really, really well. It's going to be asking, are you going to be coming on site to do discovery? Are you going to be doing this face to face and actually forming a relationship? As people, I feel like it's a line that I've beat like a dead horse, unfortunately, but going on these live streams, I talk about I want to meet people in person. If you're just looking at me over video, it's not a natural thing for me at all. So yeah. I like to come out.
Zoom days be over, please.
Oh my goodness, yes, I absolutely agree. The more times you want me on site, the more times I can actually have a face-to-face interaction with you. I feel a lot better about our relationship as a project manager. How can I understand you as a client? But also, I feel like that would probably make you more comfortable with me as well. So I think that's an important thing that Isaac hit on.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree. We love being on site. And Eric, I just saw you chime in. So let me get to Eric's comment. He said, this is such a great conversation from the perspective of a best of breed player. It's interesting that so much of our business is attained by a single system install that didn't solve the business problems described in the RFP. We are called in after the fact. What do you guys think about that?
Isaac, you want to go ahead? I've been stealing all the limelight here.
No, yeah, you're good. That's absolutely right. It is a tall ask to find a system that solves everything. But it's possible, right? Or at least 99% of what you need. And it goes back to phase 0, phase 1, discovery. What is the problem and what all are we trying to solve? The more we document, the more we understand, the better we're going to be able to um, get the right responses and make sure we can evaluate those, that they're actually solving the problem that is initiated this whole process. And so just again, I said it before, but don't let things go through the cracks, and that starts with building a strong foundation, I think.
It
Yeah, really,
does.
really.
And I think, sorry, Dave, just real quick, I think it's our job as the consultant to stay up to date on what options are available to our clients, right? The whole reason we do this live stream and the whole reason we go about the way we deliver our projects is because we want to be the trusted advisor in this space, right? That's the brand. We want to be the clearinghouse of information for every public sector agency out there. And I think it's very fair to say that our clients, sometimes they don't know what they don't know, right? They've never been through an ERP transformation. They don't know the best path forward. So we are that trusted advisor to help them see what paths are available to them. Maybe they haven't even considered best of breed because they have seen big logos, right? And big advertisements, and they've been, a victim of marketing and these dog and pony shows, which is very easy to do. There's some good products out there, guys, but sometimes best of breed might be the best way to go for your organization. And you're not going to know that until you hire a consultant or you do your research on the front end on the best way to go about it. So I think for me, if I was going to go through a project, I would, one, hire a consultant, but two, ask the right questions. Tell me about your recent implementation projects. What vendors have you worked with? Have you worked, I would want to see that they've worked with all vendors, right? And that they've worked with every aspect, both large and small, to implement some of these things. I would also want to know that, my consultant doesn't have another practice, right, on the other side of the house that they're implementing only certain vendors' product. I would want them to be truly agnostic. Sorry, Dave, go ahead. I got kind of on a tangent there.
No, you absolutely added all the correct info there. I would think that like Isaac said, it's important to define what you truly want and what you truly need. Want and need are two things you kind of walk a little bit of a fine line with them. If you fall too much in the want category, you can really end up taking the cost of the system beyond proportions that you're able to accommodate. You have a governing board that you have to answer to. So it's feathering in that want and need, but really defining that need. That's what's going to help on the front end, because the last thing that you want to do, go through this process, implement a single solution, and then come to find out, hey, we actually need to do best of breed. So it's a lot of thorough work on the front end. That's why there's a lot of meetings. That's why there's a lot of discussion and documenting items to make sure that does not happen to our clients. So I definitely agree with Megan. I would recommend hiring a consultant. And if hiring a consultant is not something that you're able to do right now, there's a lot of research that you got to go into. You can't necessarily just say, oh, well, I saw these two vendors at this vendor hall and I watched this one video on their website and I'm pretty sold. You want to make sure that you do all your market research that you possibly can.
Well, and document too, because that documentation becomes key when you are contracting with any vendor, right? We want to make sure that you are getting what you're paying for, and sometimes that's not always the case, right? Especially when you get into implementation. So you do want to make sure that you document every single thing so that you have something to stand on if something, goes south during the implementation. Isaac, do you have anything else to add?
Well, you hit it right there. One of my red flags going back to that
Yeah.
was poor documentation, right? A good consultant's going to write as much down as they can because it's going to be helpful throughout the whole process. So that's all the way from the beginning, who are our stakeholders? How can we, how do they communicate? How do we keep them happy? Discovery, what are the issues? Into like requirement traceability matrix, all that stuff. And then again, into, contracting and selecting a vendor the more we document, the more that we can, it's documented proof, right? This is how we scored, this is how we selected, and this was the best option. So if there's any pushback, we can support that with good documentation. So I think that's really important. And it's work to write things down. Sometimes you want to just keep it in your head, but the more you document, the better you're going to be in the long run.
Well, and let's not forget, I'm kind of stating the obvious here, but these are tax dollars that we're utilizing, right? So we want to make sure that we document to allow for that transparency as well, right? We want to be able to tell our constituents that, hey, this is the reason we chose XYZ system, because they scored the highest and this is why, right? If anybody, we're working in the corner of our client. We don't want anybody to come back and say, hey, this was not a fair process, right? That we don't want to end up in the news. We don't want our clients to end up in the news. So yes, documentation is key. And you want to make sure that you hire, one of my lights just went out if you couldn't tell. You want to make sure that you hire a consultant who's going to do that for you. Let's talk a little bit about how we craft our RFPs for our clients to make it easier on the software vendor. Before, I think we had, maybe a 3,000 line item requirements traceability matrix that we needed vendors to sign off on. But with all the modernization that's happening in the world, is that needed now?
I would definitely say no. You do not need a 3,000-4,000 line requirement traceability matrix. There's no need to put in a RTM that the system can support the entry of a first name. That's something that's common across every single system. Spell check items like that. That's where you really start to add in details that everybody's going to mark yes, because it's something that's been around for a long, long time. So taking those RTMs and really defining, hey, this is the functionality that we're looking for, not necessarily going down to the nitty gritty the way that it used to be. Date of birth, social security number, the system's going to be able to support that, every single system. So removing those and kind of, clearing that up. I would say another thing that we do to kind of make sure that we get the most amount of proposals that we can is we have a very, very clear and defined scope. And I know that Megan knows this well from working in business development, same with me and Isaac as well. There's nothing that's a little bit worse than getting an RFP that has a very, very muddy scope of work. It's like, okay, so you want something that's over here, then 5 things that are over here, then 3 things that are over here, and none of it really kind of gels together. Making sure that you have a defined scope of work that truly makes sense. And I don't want to necessarily say practical, but logically it makes sense. It's not all over the board. So I would say that those are 2 of the biggest things to make sure that it gives that clarity to the vendor, so that way they can put together a good proposal.
I agree. I like what you said about the RTM is, we don't need 3,000 items because 1, everyone's going to do it, and 2, I feel like you're going to get less accurate responses. We'll say, more importantly, we need to focus on the things that are unique to our client, right? So like you said, everyone can hold a name, everyone can hold a birthday. But what are the unique processes that might be unique to your organization that you really need the vendor to be able to do? And so those are the things, if we reduce our requirements and just focus on, those key unique items, you're going to get a better response from your RFP, and then ultimately a better solution.
Yeah, think about how many RFPs are released on the daily, right? If I am in business development for a software vendor, I don't want to answer 3,000 line items. That would make me go crazy, right? So I think it is about making sure that we define requirements that are unique to our clients, so that our vendors aren't pulling their hair out trying to respond to an RFP. So we do try to make it very easy, because the goal is we want to give our clients options. So it's best for the vendor, it's best for our client, and that's what's best for us ultimately, right? Because we want to make sure that we provide those options to them. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up today. I think that this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you all joining me and giving a client side perspective to all of this. Eric, thank you so much for joining, and thank you for your comment. We really appreciate you supporting our live stream, and thank you for engaging with us. If you have any other questions, any other comments, please post them in the chat. I will go back and answer anything. I'm available via LinkedIn. These guys are too. So if you want to have a conversation outside of the live stream, we're happy to do so. Again, make sure that you download our ERP survival kit, especially if you're thinking about embarking on an ERP overhaul journey. Make sure you follow us on all platforms. We have tons of videos and content just like this. We are very passionate about the work we do, and we want to make sure that you guys have the right information and that you all are able to break through all the noise that is out in the marketplace. Before we go today, key takeaways. We're going to hot potato this. Isaac, what's your key takeaway for today?
Key takeaway, keep it fair. And we're like I said, from the beginning, we're the wall, right? So we got to be that connection. We got to kind of hold everyone to the ground, not let those opinions take over, right? So that's what I got.
Yeah,
Dave?
key takeaway would definitely be do the upfront work. Really make sure that you define what's going on with your ERP system. You want a lot more than just this person's unhappy with the ERP system. You want true, actual definitions of those pain points. And then another key takeaway is I think that Megan needs to apologize to the Miami Dolphins and Devon Achane. I don't think, if he's watching today, and I hope he is, I don't think he was expecting his name to be brought up at this topic. So,
well, I hope he is watching. He was on my fantasy team last year, and as many of you know, I was the reigning champ, and I'm very proud of that title. I have a ring and everything. He was on my team, and so I know what I'm talking about. That's what happened. I don't know what. It's so crazy to me. I like the Miami Dolphins, just to put that out there. But Tua, he's going to get a concussion. It's crazy. I don't know. It seems like he's going to get one every year. So no harm, no foul. Hopefully, and hopefully he did watch this. That would be awesome. That was going to be my key takeaway. I think, Isaac, your analogy with football, having a key player, it does you no good if you don't have a quarterback that can throw to him. And I think that's so key when choosing a software vendor, right? It does you no good if you buy this shiny new system and none of your people use it and it's not helping your organization. And so that's my key takeaway. Thank you, Dave, for the call out. But thank you both. I think you did an incredible job, and we will see you all next Wednesday.